Hello everybody, welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'll be doing a review of the new film A Quiet Place Day 1. Been a while since I've done a review of a film on the channel, as I've been mostly writing them over on Criticlist, but I figured I would try something a little bit different than my typical reviews in the past with this film, starting with this film, A Quiet Place Day 1, and I'll get more into that in just a second. Overall, though, very much enjoyed this movie, a film that did much better at the box office in its opening weekend than some of the initial projections were showing, and I think that I can see why that is the case, because the film ultimately did its job and was very effective. But before we get any further, please make sure you smash that like button, loud that fire button over on Aussie, smash the rumble button as well. Also, make sure that you have that bell icon clicked, so that way you get notified every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So the way I'm going to handle reviews going forward, or at least my initial plan to, obviously things can always randomly change, is going to be trying to essentially make an audio form of my written reviews over on Criticlist, so that way I can still get a video review out for those that would much rather listen to and watch a video rather than actually read the text of the article itself. It also allows me to opine and add other things that maybe I thought were not appropriate for a written review. Obviously, I am not a huge fan of writing, but one of the things I love about Criticlist is that it has actually motivated me to do so and to be more of a writer in this way, and so please check out my account over on criticlist.com. It's an excellent site. All right, so starting off with my review, it says, just getting home from the theater to write this review, and I can happily say that this film was really good. Not only does it feature fantastic performances from Lupita Nyong'o as the lead and Joseph Quinn in a supporting role, but it also has a solid use of CGI effects, a beautiful score, effective cinematography, and absolutely excellent sound design. And I'll just pause there for a moment because you all know I'm a stickler when it comes to CG effects, and even though there are some times in the film where things do look a bit artificial, especially in the cityscape scenes. You can tell that there's some green screen usage, some CG usage. Obviously, they're not actual city buildings. I thought, especially for the budget, I think the budget was around $68 million for this movie, that they were able to use what money they had and were able to be very effective with that. We've already seen this with the other Quiet Place films, right? Each of them costing in that $60 to $70 million range from what my memory serves. And also being able to not only use that to create the monsters and a very effective look to the monsters in their limited use case. And I think that's also ultimately a good thing. Sometimes movies that have even higher budgets use too much of their monsters, and you can tell all of the flaws, you can tell all of the imperfections, and it's not as effective. And so one of the things that I love about this film and this franchise is how effective they ultimately use the moments that they actually show the monsters themselves. The one thing I will absolutely say and stress, though, is that the sound design of this film is phenomenal. I actually got to see this film in IMAX, and I think that that was definitely the best choice for this movie because of how important the sound design is for creating that sense of tension in this very thrilling film. All right, going on. I go on to say, going into the movie, I had mixed expectations. On the one hand, this is a film set in an interesting universe created by John Krasinski, which has now been given over to the director of the film Pig from last year, which, though interesting, had some issues, especially with cinematography. I'll pause there because it's interesting. The same cinematographer who did Pig also did the cinematography for this, and so I was actually quite worried from the very beginning of, oh boy, are we going to have the same weird shaky cam usage that we had in Pig, because it just really took me out of the movie, right? He was just gathering, I think it was like gathering mushrooms or gathering, foraging in his little forest from his cabin with his pig. And it was very jarring because it's like, wait, why is there a shaky cam right now? This does not make any sense. It's my biggest criticism really of the film Pig. And so I was kind of worried when I saw the same name listed for cinematography. Luckily, it seems like he's either learned something or his skills are much more fitting to this type of movie, this genre of film, this genre of movie. And so luckily that is not a problem in this film. Go on. On the other hand, this is the third film in a franchise that for all intents and purposes is still quite young and leaves a lot of ground to be explored. Luckily, I would say this film leans towards a 10 Cloverfield Lane in regards to quality, while still remaining much more established in the universe that A Quiet Place 1 and 2 have set up. And so I brought up a 10 Cloverfield Lane because in that instance, it was a film set in the Cloverfield universe that had been established, right, by the actual monster film that was Cloverfield, which I thought was a very underrated film, but it is connected to it more loosely, right? Most of the film in that in 10 Cloverfield Lane focuses much more on this human relationship, right, of this very weird, creepy guy who has this bunker, says that the world is about to end or has already ended. The air is not safe, trying to keep these people inside. And then you find out more about him. Again, very good performance from John Goodman in that movie. But I will say that this movie obviously is so much more connected, right? It is part of the same universe. Obviously, John Krasinski not directing this film, though he does have a writing credit because he was a part of the story writing for this, or at least is given some credit for the story writing for this. And I think that when you are then ultimately looking at this movie, I have that connection there because it feels self-contained, right? Just as 10 Cloverfield Lane felt self-contained, but still a part of the Cloverfield universe, this one also feels very much self-contained, but obviously much more clearly connected to this universe. You even have a character played by Jimon Hounsou, who had been in A Quiet Place Part 2, I believe. It was either Part 1 or Part 2, if not both. And so he actually shows up in this film as well. He was shown in the trailers. He was being marketed, so that's not really spoiling much of anything. But I think that because you do have that connection still, it is, I think, very effective in that. So obviously, right, there's a lot of reasons why this film could potentially be bad, right? Because John Krasinski is no longer in the director's chair. He has some creative impact because of the story, but really this is in the hands of the director from Pig. And so obviously, that could create some issues. Luckily, that is not the case. The film, as I mentioned before, has just a very effective score, very effective story writing as well. It is not above criticism, though, and this is where I get into some of those criticisms. As far as criticisms of the film, the first one is pretty obvious, has been mentioned by several reviewers: the cat. There are many times where the silence from the cat comes across as a bit convenient and is hard to believe. While I do think the film balances this to a degree by featuring the cat causing a couple of moments where the sounds it makes endanger the lives of others, I definitely thought a few times about why the characters in the film would still want it around as a clear liability, and I say this as an animal lover. So obviously, love my dogs, love my hounds, love animals in general, and so I understand why you would want to hold on to your pet even in the midst of an apocalyptic event, but there are also a couple of times when the cat actually does cause the potential for death, right? It actually does put the characters in danger, and so I immediately think, okay, that's a bit of a problem, right? And it makes, I guess, some sense in regards to the character played by Lupita Nyong'o, because even from the trailer, we know that she has a terminal illness, and so she is nearing, very close to nearing her own death, and so she may not care about humans as much, right? Human life as much, but it is also still one of those things where, yeah, it's a valid criticism for sure, but I do think that at least the cat is not completely above any problems, because, again, the cat does cause problems that actually lead to other lives being put in danger. So I'm glad that those were at least in there, because that is a much more realistic take. But only having a few moments like that, really just like 2 moments, I think, that I can remember, where the actual cat makes noise, right, either by running into something or just from his own actions, I definitely think does still need to be called out as a valid criticism. The other issue I have with the film is the development, or lack thereof, the character played by Joseph Quinn. The performance by Quinn is very, very well done and effective for the story that they are telling, but the limited background information we are given about him makes some of his choices seem a bit confusing and leaving much to be desired. It is one thing to leave a bit of mystery to a character's background, but it is another thing when the mystery leaves his motivations as a character muddled and confusing. This is probably my bigger issue than even the cat, because I was able to mostly suspend my belief when it came to the cat of the film, because, like, okay, a lot of films do this where you're like, okay, why is there an animal here? This animal would cause nonstop chaos and nonstop problems. This is a bigger one for me, though. So when the character of Joseph Quinn is introduced, and he's not really introduced until about maybe halfway or so through the actual movie itself, you don't really know a whole lot about him, right? Even as his character unfolds, you find out he is there going to law school. He is obviously out of his home, right? His family lives in the UK. You don't really get a lot more information than that. And because you're not really getting a lot more information about him, the reasons as to, well, why is he following Lupita Nyong'o's character? Why does he care about helping her? It just leaves that, right? Had they maybe set up a bit more about his loneliness, because I think that's kind of where they were going with it, was, okay, he's here in the city, he's from another country, he has no access to his family, so he's feeling lonely, so he doesn't want to be alone, so that's why he follows Lupita Nyong'o's character, and then doesn't want to leave her, and then ends up wanting to help her. I just feel like there could have been a lot more there. I think a lot more time could have been spent maybe giving some more background on his character. It would make us buy into their relationship a bit more, but also his actions and his decisions would end up making a lot more sense as well, especially as to why he is choosing to really help Lupita Nyong'o, fulfill her ultimate mission, which is to get pizza. That's also something that, again, has been talked about in reviews and other places, and I'll talk about that towards the end as a slight spoiler. In that regard, though, this is very much a straightforward film, and so there really isn't a whole lot to necessarily spoil. The last paragraph I have here is, that being said, this is a wonderful addition to the Quiet Place universe, and luckily remains a one-off story that will likely not spawn any direct sequels. It is refreshing to see a movie set in a larger universe that is not setting up for something else, or is only giving you the first part of a series of films. We all know that is way too common these days. Though the story is not perfect, and it would be great to have a film that takes the vantage point of the military as they figure out what the aliens in the film can and cannot do, which this film glosses over quite a bit, sadly. I would highly still recommend this movie for those that enjoy a thrilling monster film that luckily only features 1 to 2 cheap jump scares and is mostly driven by effectively creepy and powerful sound design. Seeing this in IMAX absolutely enhanced the experience. So I did see this in IMAX, and as I mentioned in the beginning, the sound design is so effective. That's what made it really creepy for me. There's definitely a couple of moments where you're like, okay, that's your cheap jump scare, right? The monster's jumping out. There's like a dream sequence, and you have something very similar, and I feel like these films tend to have that. Luckily, it's very limited, and the creepiest moments to me were when they were trying to be quiet, right? So it wasn't even about the jumping out of nowhere, not expecting something. It was more of that tension being built because of the score, because of the design of how you are, again, hearing the breaths of the characters. You are hearing the sounds and the clicking being made by the monster, and having that IMAX, especially with that's surround sound, was very brought you into the world and definitely made me feel that tension, which is something where, again, I don't like horror films, but when it comes to thrillers like this, I actually do quite enjoy them quite a bit. And so that's why ultimately I think the film is effective. Now, as I mentioned, though, in this last part about the military, one of the things that also others have talked about in regards to this film is that you were hoping, this being day one, you would actually see the process by which they figure out, okay, they can only, they can't see, they can only sense sound, and they are drawn by sound, right? About, how long did it take to figure them out? How did they figure that out? Like, seeing that play out would have been really cool, would have been really interesting. Instead, they kind of gloss over it, where there is a moment where Lupita Nyong'o's character gets knocked out, and then when she wakes up, everyone who is still alive at that point now automatically knows, oh, sound is what draws them. It's okay. Going into that time when she's knocked out, that actually might be a bit more interesting. In fact, I would actually be interested to see another Quiet Place film set around the same time on day one, but instead of it taking it from this one singular character, this one-off character, who has, I think, a very compelling story, and that's why also I ultimately like this movie, because of the story that it tells, instead maybe taking it from the military's perspective, right, of how they are handling this, right? There's some references to the military very early on in the movie, so you think, okay, did they see and know that these were, mysterious ships that were coming down, long before then, right? How are they preparing? What did they know? What did they not know? And I think that would be actually very interesting to see them be able to play out in a film. And so if they were going to continue this, I imagine there probably will be at least another 1 or 2 in this franchise, because based off of how the film currently is tracking, it seems like the chances of it breaking even, making some money are I would say, quite good. And so it would be interesting, though, to kind of see it from that perspective. But it also does, again, make you wonder, okay, a film called Day One, not going into that, does leave some things to be desired. But because of all those things, I will have to say I give this film a most excellent score according to the critic list count. So that's an 80% most excellent score. It was a good time. It was a film I had a lot of fun with. It's a film that I would actually be interested in seeing again. So probably have plans to get this film on 4K when it comes out. I already have the other 2 Quiet Place films. I think this movie fits very, very well in that universe that has been established, that has been set up. I could definitely see why some might have issues with the movie, especially when it comes to the cat or when it comes to the character played by Joseph Quinn. But I think that ultimately it's still a pretty good film. And if you look at the overall score and critic list, 17 votes, it is a rad score for this movie, right? So a 70% rad film is what this movie currently is standing at. Also, an hour and 39 minutes, so it's on the shorter end, and I think that in the world that we live in today, when shorter films are very limited, it seems. Unfortunately, it is definitely something that is refreshing to see, especially when I was looking at my watch throughout the movie because I have ADD, and so I get distracted sometimes, being able to look and say, oh, okay, this film's wrapping up, and it seems like a pretty good time and place for this film to actually wrap up. That's pretty nice, okay? The last thing I'll mention in regards to this film is definitely going to go into certain things about spoilers. So the one thing I will mention here, so if you want to know about spoilers, this is the moment to maybe turn off the video or to jump ahead maybe like a minute. What I'll say is at the very end, I like how in the search for the pizza, right? Why is the pizza such a big deal? Some people have issues with that. But if you remind yourself, okay, she's terminally ill, right? She knows she's dying, and there is a poem read by Joseph Quinn that was written by her because she used to be a poet, and it deals with the fact that she's lived so much longer than the expectations by the doctors, meaning she has no idea when she's going to die, right? She was like, I was told 4 to 6 months, and now it's month 6. I was told, 2 years or 1 to 2 years. It's now year 2. So like going through the process she's been going through of, I've been told I have this amount of time, and I've exceeded that time. So now I'm on this borrowed time. And so when she finally gets back into the city, her immediate thought is, okay, I want to go get pizza. And then you find out, well, why that is the case. And ultimately it's because her dad, who had passed away, I believe from the same thing, or at least from cancer, who had passed away, when they would go, he would play piano, and he loved, she talks very highly about how he played the piano beautifully. When they would come back from the club, they would actually go get pizza at this one place. And so in her mind, it's like, I have no idea when I'm going to die. And now that I'm here, the only thing I want, right, because my life is basically on, is already getting close to being ended. All I want is that one last time to go get pizza at that place where me and my dad went, right, to be my last memory, to be able to enjoy this. And, obviously that spoils, I guess, some of it technically. So I won't go into much further detail than that. But just to know, right, that how that plays out, and then where that leads the very final end of the movie to go, I think is a very touching and very well-written account, and I think it also really helps make the character of, the character played by Joseph Quinn that much more impactful and effective as well. But those are my thoughts. Have you seen A Quiet Place Day 1? What are your thoughts on this review format? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button. Loud that fire button over on Aussie. Smash the rumble button as well. And again, thank you all very much for watching today. You are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I will have an updated list of shout-outs in the next couple of days, and so this will be one of the last times we'll get the June shout-outs in. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Patreon, Subscribe Star, Locals, and YouTube members who are at the Chosen of Valhalla level. Starting off with my Patreon supporters, Father Luca Illick, Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel, which is Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name. To my Subscribe Star Chosen members, Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name, and also the K-Man, check him out at xtheboundaries.co, and a shout out also to my one Chosen of Valhalla YouTube member, Mr. Roy. Thank you again for being so much of a huge supporter of the channel. And to every one of my chosen members, if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, or if you want access to things like giveaways of Blu-rays, 4Ks, etc., and access to an exclusive podcast bonus material for members, check out the links in the video description below for all of those details. You guys are amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, a blessed month of the Sacred Heart, and as always, God bless.